Okay, today we're going to be talking about ancient China and mostly the geography. So I want you to watch this video, take some notes, and there will be a quick write at the end of the video that you will need to take care of. Okay, so some physical features of China. There are three great rivers that flow through the broad, fertile valleys of eastern China. You have in the north, the Yellow River, known as the Huang He, flows through the northeastern China. The Yangtze River, or the Yangtze Klang, through eastern and central China, and then the West River, or the Chiang, which flows through southeastern China. Land watered by these rivers has been farmed since ancient times. Today, as in the past, most of the people of China live in the east where all the fertile farmland is located. Only 13% of China's total land can be farmed, which this is remarkable considering how much population they're able to support with only 13% of the land being able to be farmed. Two-thirds of China is desert. You have the Gobi Desert is in the north, and then in the Himalaya area, it's mountainous and a high rugged plateau that is very similar to desert conditions. Okay, if you look on the map, you can see the green over here in the eastern parts of China, in this area here. Okay, this is the area that can be farmed, with some of the southeastern areas also. But if you look out in the west and in the north, there's a lot of brown and reds, and those are dry plateau areas, some even desert, as you have up here in this area. This is the Gobi Desert. Okay, so Chinese farmers have adapted their land by working the soil, fertilizing it, using irrigation and crop rotation. This process is called intensive farming, and using the land to its maximum extent. China's densely populated eastern regions are cut off from the world by mountains, deserts, and the Pacific Ocean. And this has allowed China to develop in isolation. And as a result, China looked at their own civilization as the only one that existed and regarded anybody from outside as barbarians. And this is a term that you need to know. It's called ethnocentrism, thinking that your culture is the most important one, the only one, and you measure every other culture against it. Okay, the barriers, isolated from other nations. You have brutal deserts, high mountain ranges like the Himalayas and others to the west and the southwest. There's thick rainforests along the borders with Southeast Asia, with modern-day Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. And you have the Gobi Desert in the north, which is part of China shares with Mongolia, and then finally the Pacific Ocean in the east. These factors have helped protect China from invasion, but they also isolate it from trade with its neighbors. And it really takes until the modern era where China really becomes the trading powerhouse that we know today. Though they did have a brief period in the 13th and 14th century that we will talk about a little bit down the road in the course. Okay, China's climate is varied. There's desert lands in the north, as I've said. They have cold winters and hot, dry summers. The northeast, though cool and dry, has enough moisture to grow wheat. In southern China, the climate's similar to neighboring Southeast Asia. It's hot and humid, and this is an area that helps them to grow a lot of rice. And rice feeds a lot of people. Okay, in the summer months, wet monsoons, just like in India, blow northward across China's coastal areas and river valleys, and they bring heavy rainfall. In the winter, the monsoons blow over China from the north, bringing cold and dry air, just like in India. In the spring, the amount of rain that falls over different parts of China can either be heavy or light. If it is unusually heavy, the rivers like the Yellow and the Yangtze will likely flood, causing destruction and loss of life. If little rainfall occurs, there are dangers of drought and massive starvation. Throughout history, the Chinese have suffered from floods and from drought based on the strength of the monsoons. Okay, a lot of different ethnic groups in China, but there's one dominant one known as the Han Chinese. They make up 94% of the population. Because their population is so huge, there's almost 60 million people who belong to various ethnic minorities, including Mongols, Koreans, Manchus, and Tibetans. Nearly 2 million Tibetans live in the western part of China, and they've suffered from a very harsh rule. These people are Buddhists, they're highly religious, and they do not accept Chinese rule. They seek to be independent, and they recognize the Dalai Lama as the religious leader. Okay, just a map of the ethnic majority or minority and majorities of China. You can see the kind of mustard color there. That's the Han Chinese. That's the 94%. The other areas obviously are a lot more sparsely populated, and they have not as much impact on China. Okay, A little bit on the early history. So China's civilization originated around 4,000 years ago in villages along the Yellow River, just like they did in Mesopotamia and Egypt and in India prior to them. Gradually, the kingdoms on this river extend their power southward. Eventually, they gain control of the rice field of the Yangtze River, and it takes several years before the rice growing region is joined with the wheat growing region of the north. And that happens under a series of dynasties. The first is the Yangtze, developed about 7,000 years ago in the Huang He, grew millet, which is a grain, and they raised pigs. The Longshan follows about 2,000 years later and eventually replaces the Yangtze. They grow rice, they raise cattle, they carve jade. Finally, you come to the first dynasty, the Chiang, and they emerge from the Longshan culture. Okay, as you can see on the map, you have the different dynasties and as they grow. The first dynasty is generally recognized as the Chiang in the red, followed by the Zhou, the Qin, who we will spend a little bit of time on getting to know, and the Han dynasty, which is the last of the great dynasties of the early period, and we will spend some time on them. The Qin is who begins the building of the Great Wall, and all benefit from the Silk Road trading routes that develop across Asia. Okay, a little bit on the Chiang. We'll cover some more on them later. Dynasty of kings of the family name of Chiang ruled for almost hundreds of years till they lose power in 1122 BCE. Chinese society is remarkably advanced, and some of the advances that they make are a system of writing with thousands of picture symbols to represent objects and ideas. They weave silk from the threads of silkworms. They begin casting and working in bronze, and they use wheeled horse-drawn chariots in warfare. A little bit more. They unify most of the areas settled by the early Chinese cultures. And while most people still live in small farming villages, you do have a class system begin to develop. And this is the beginning of the Bronze Age. Not only are these decorative objects, but they're also tools and weapons. You have a ruling system by kings and princes, which we will get into in the next video. And you have the development of social classes. So, for your quick write, you need to have this done for class in next time. How has the geography of China affected its world relationships, its relationships with the rest of the world?